Networking with people helps massively. Speaking at conferences is one thing, but then trying to encourage other people to do that is fab.
Hello and welcome to the Jumpstart podcast with Jeffalytics. I'm your host, Jeff Sauer. Today's episode, we start by interviewing Samantha Noble, who's a Client Services Director at Koozai and Chief Editor at State of Digital. So if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you know that everyone has a direct path here. You go to college for marketing and then you become a podcast guest. It's that easy, right? Of course not. That was sarcasm. Because careers rarely unfold this way. Many people start out as web developers, writers, anthropologists, psychologists, any type of profession other than marketing, and other than making that decision, I'm going to go into online marketing. And then we have people like Sam. The story of her journey into marketing is both unique, accidental, and inspiring. But we'll have to let her share that part. One of the things I enjoyed about our conversation was hearing about Sam's job in sales and how it helped her develop profound skills that helped her as a marketer, like empathy for her customer and real-world split testing for optimal sales conditions. No buzzwords, no tricks, no technologies. She just wanted to sell more strawberries. Your website visitor is not some number in Google Analytics. She or he has a face, an opinion, habits, and a wallet. They may or may not be in the mood for your deliciously fresh produce at the time that they come to your website. So if you can't figure out how to get them through the whole funnel when you're trying to sell something like strawberries on the streets, then you're going to have some problems. So if you want to find out how you can use pieces of clothes to charm your future employer, or how going to a pub can turn an introvert into a world-class VIP speaker, then you have to hear Samantha Noble's digital marketing story. As a bonus, you get to enjoy her irresistible British accent. I'm definitely becoming more of an Anglophile after my recent trips across the pond, but I still have so much to learn, so fill me in there. And obviously leave a comment for us in the show notes at jeffalytics.com/Sam. This episode is sponsored by my Google Analytics course. So if you want to learn with me, we have an awesome course we developed at analyticscourse.net. I hope you check it out. So we're here today with Samantha Noble. Sam, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you. We met at Hero Conference in London.
Yeah.
And I think it's a funny story how we met. I was sitting next to Phil Pierce at a table, and I was like, "Hey Phil, I'm starting a podcast. Do you know anybody who would be a good guest?" And he pointed over to you, who was also sitting at the table, and he's like, "She'd be a great guest. Have Sam on the podcast." I was like, "Okay." So I got your business card. I actually have it right here with me, and we connected. And so now, a couple months later, we're interviewing you for the podcast. So it's sort of funny how things work out.
Yeah, it's right time, right place.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm excited to hear about your story and your journey. And I just wanted to start off by asking you a question that I like to ask everybody, and that is, when did you sort of know that this was the right career for you, going into the world of marketing, and when did you first get excited about this world?
It was a company that I started working for, probably about 12 years ago now. It was a travel company, and I started off there as an admin assistant because I went to college, didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I sort of went into travel. That wasn't what I wanted to do at all. And I left college really quickly after I joined. I only stayed there for a couple of months and then just went into work. So when I was working for the travel company, I started off, as an admin assistant, and I got working closely with the marketing director, who then asked me to go and become his PA. And I think it was there really, it was his passion and his enthusiasm for marketing that kind of made my ears prick, if you like. And I started learning a lot from him. It was more offline marketing back then. There wasn't a huge amount of online marketing happening. There was a bit of email every now and again, but it was mainly offline. So I started there, and that's where my career began really, I think. But it was primarily offline, and I did that for a good couple of years, learning from him. And before then moving into the marketing department myself and helping them produce all their brochures and all their offline marketing pieces, all their DM, sending out mail-ins to huge databases of actual physical addresses, which I can't say I've done that for many years since, but so it was kind of then really, and it's sort of spiraled from there.
Yeah, so you were doing this and reaching all kinds of different people, even the traditional way of doing things, what they call snail mail.
Yep.
And you're just like, wow, this is really powerful that I can reach all these people, and that there's different, not just that I'm sending out a message, but what goes into the message and who I choose to send it to, and basically all the fundamentals of marketing.
Yeah, and it was an interesting role because the travel company obviously has markets in all different countries of the world. So it was actually working. The first project that I worked on was helping them to consolidate all of their brochures and create different brochures, actual physical brochures, that got sent out in the post for the different countries. And it was interesting how the different countries received different brochures. So the front covers were different. The messaging in the brochure was different depending on the country and the people that you're marketing to. So I think that just got me thinking that yes, different countries need to be treated differently. But from a direct mailing perspective, that's as granular as you can go. You can't get really targeted. You can't start sending individual brochures out to specific people because it's not cost effective at all. So it was that kind of just got me thinking, okay, there's got to be another way of doing this sort of stuff. And then I got into a bit more of the email side of things where you can get a bit more personalised to that person. And then I slowly moved into digital from there.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So back in the direct mail time that you were in and looking at that, it sounds like a lot of, and just knowing how direct mail works, it takes a lot of time to plan sending something to a different country or to a different place. So you have to make sure that you get it right. So it's not something that you can just create a campaign, select the country from your drop-down list, and then magically you're advertising now in a different country.
No.
You're planning 6 to 12 months in advance, and it's very permanent because that is going into somebody's hands. So you got to make sure that you get it right.
You can't make a mistake. There is no room for error, which is... It's quite worrying, really, when you're kind of looking back to how we used to do things. And yeah, of course, errors slip through, but when they do, it's demoralising. You're so disheartened because you've worked so hard on something. To then see even the smallest thing like a grammatical error in the brochure, it goes through so many stages of proofing. To then see an error, it's just like and you can't change it. It's not like you've got a web page of copy that you can quickly go in, refresh, done. It is permanent, as you say. You can't go back.
Yeah, there's no WYSIWYG editor for sending out a direct mail piece. Did that experience though? Did it help influence your ability to deliver campaigns now? Have you taken some of those fundamentals that you learned there and incorporated it into what you do? Has that been helped you along the way with transitioning into digital?
Absolutely. I think I'm quite an organised person anyway, but having been exposed to that style of marketing, yeah, absolutely. There is organisation is absolutely key, and that kind of attention to detail is so important. I think if I hadn't had that exposure at that age, at that early stages of my career, I don't think that I would have I just wouldn't have learned that. And I think there would have been a lot more learning curves along the way, if you like, when it comes to that side of things.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I had a similar background. I started out, the first real gig that somebody paid me to do in marketing was to do massive database mailing campaigns for direct mail.
Yeah.
And I had to get the process right. I couldn't screw up, right? If you screw up there, you're talking about mailing stuff to people that costs money. I mean, there's a cost to sending a piece of mail. There's, at the time, probably, anywhere from like 25 cents in the US or 25 cents to $1 to $5 per piece. The things that I was sending out in the mail cost $5. And it's like, okay, well, if you send it to one wrong person, okay, you just wasted $5. But if you send it to the wrong segment altogether, you could talk about 100,000 plus to $1 million plus if you get it wrong. So you have a lot more stakes there. And that was drilled into my head as well. And so I think that now that we talk about it out loud, it's interesting about how that being drilled into your head that you're costing money. It did actually translate pretty well to the digital world. The stakes weren't as high, I guess you could say. I mean, you're wasting money on clicks, for example, with AdWords, or you're wasting money in other ways, but the stakes are still there if you don't do this right.
And especially depending on the industry that you're working. If you're talking sort of PPC and you're doing PPC for a finance sector, the costs are significant. If you mess up and don't realise you've messed up, then it can be extremely costly.
Well, the other thing that could happen is back then with direct mail, I have to tell this funny story. So back, I was doing direct mail for a company that works with expectant mothers, and they would send people coupons for that type of stuff, products around being an expectant mother. And we would, if we accidentally sent it to like somebody who was an elderly person, or to somebody who didn't know that, like their family didn't know that they were expecting.
Yeah.
Those types of things were really risky, and we'd get all kinds of complaint calls. But back then, the complaints would be a call to a call center, and the call center would handle it with that person one-to-one. Nowadays, though, if you do something wrong, if you hit the wrong person, or if you target wrong, or you do something incorrect, that's going on social media. It's not just one-to-one communication that's going there. The stakes actually, in that sense, are much higher with the permanence of what you're doing. So it doesn't seem like, just because it's digital, it's ones and zeros when you put it all together. There's a lot that could happen if you get a campaign wrong in these days as well.
Yeah, and I think even going back to like the brochure mailings, if you're not cleansing your database properly, and obviously you can't cleanse it as fully as what you would want to do, but there are examples where you're sending out mailing pieces to families who have just lost that person. Now that can't be helped, but that's still, obviously it happens, but it's that kind of thing. And then you've got the grieved person on the other end of the phone saying, you need to remove my husband from the mailing list. Unfortunately, he passed away 2 weeks ago, and it's that kind of thing. It's also dealing with people and their emotional side of things as well, because once that's there and it's in the post, you can't, like you say, you can't take it back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the same thing applies still with like remarketing and retargeting. It's just that you don't really know as much, and your ads are just so much more forgettable. So yes. Maybe since it's so forgettable, these ads we put out, maybe it's more forgivable at the same time by those who are going through it, because they're not really noticing these things. But I think all these fundamentals apply, and anybody who is getting started in this industry, or who started and has only done digital, you should know some of the struggles we went through, because not only, like, it's not like when I was your age, it was harder to do advertising. It wasn't necessarily harder, it was just different. But I think there's a lot of fundamentals we can apply moving forward.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so what did you go to school to do? Did you go to university to study marketing, or how did you get into this industry in the first place? I
didn't. I left school, as I think a lot of people in the UK do, and I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was a 16-year-old. My GCSEs weren't as good as what I thought they were going to be. I'm not great at doing exams. So all my coursework and everything, I was going really well, and then the exams were just not great. So I had my initial goal was to go to university, go to college and do sociology, psychology and English as A-level. And my grades, I would have had to have gone and resat a couple of exams. I thought, I don't want to do that. So then I kind of went to college and just followed what a couple of my friends were doing, really. And then I did travel and tourism. And like I said, I left college after 3 months, and I just didn't go to university either. I went straight into work. Mm-hmm. So I've got no educational background in that sense at all. Everything that I've learned has been on the job and full work experience rather than any sort of education background.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because I think that, I've talked to a lot of people on the podcast who got the marketing degree. A lot of people are very technical, but also some people, just like yourself, just go through this process and just stumble into marketing.
You fall into it. Yeah, exactly that. You fall into it.
So how did that process work of falling into it? So the first job that you had out of school working at the travel company then?
Yeah, that was the first. Well, the first job out of school was working for a clothing company, so that was just a Saturday job, and then I went into travel, and I stayed there for 5 years, I think, at the travel company. So I sort of moved around, as I say. I started off in the admin team, then I became a PA to the marketing director, then I moved into the marketing department, and it was after about 5 years I just started getting a bit of itchy feet, thinking there's more to this. So started looking around, and then I came across an online marketing role. So it was focusing primarily on PPC, a little bit of SEO, and then I moved, and that was in the financial services industry, working for a secured loan provider. So that I made the jump. It was one of those things where I think I was 17 when I first joined the travel company. So at that age, once you've been somewhere for 5 years, it's a long time of your life, a long period of your life. You lose behind a lot of friends. Travel is much more fun than financial services, believe it or not. So making that leap was a quite a big decision, but I learned probably the most I've ever learned about attention to detail and accuracy when I worked for the financial services company, because of the sheer volume of traffic that you were getting through on paid search ads, and the cost. Absolutely ridiculously high CPCs, and this was going back like 9 years now. So it was, even back then, really high CPCs, and it was an interesting year, because when I started doing that job, it was when the UK just started going through the recession. Mm-hmm. So the financial services company that I worked for, they had a life insurance brand and also a secured loan brand, and somebody else was managing the life insurance brand marketing, and I was there to do the online stuff for the secured loan business. And it would convert, but you couldn't actually get people to physically get the loans. And we were thinking, wow, what's going on? We're getting the right traffic through, they're qualified leads, we're spending the right amount of money, the CPA from that side of thing is fine.
Yep.
But people weren't actually being able to physically take out the loans. The loan providers were just declining everything, and it was then that you're thinking something's not quite right. And then we started going through the recession, so it became apparent that was the problem. But I was in constant battles with myself and the owner, because we just couldn't get it to work. So you feel like you're failing, but after a couple of months, we realised what the problem was, and the secured loan side of the business isn't really there now, because people just don't get that kind of loan anymore.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So basically, you know, going back to the first job that you had, you sort of just were around marketers and sort of just absorbed marketing by being involved with that, and then turned into a role, and then with enough experience and just enough growth within that organization, you're like, hey, is there anything else I can learn?
Exactly that.
Is there more that I can do? And I think a lot of us get that experience. And I've actually, anybody that I've coached or talked to, and myself, I say, if you don't have anything more to learn from this job, it's time to move on. No matter what it is, no matter how much you like working with these people, it's time to move on. If you can't learn any more from the people around you, then you're just going to stagnate, or you won't grow as much. And so you got to move on to that next role.
Yeah, you got to push yourself outside your comfort zone. If you sit there just doing a job that you know how to do inside out, day in, day out, it does get boring. It makes you kind of stagnate, and you need to push yourself. If you want to do something, you need to take charge of your own destiny and go for it. It doesn't just always fall in your lap.
Yeah, and not only that, but it also can hurt your self-esteem. It can hurt your sense of self-worth, and that if you're not doing meaningful work. Yeah,
you're at work most of your life, so you need to be doing something that you love and you enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you go into this new area, and you're like, okay, I have all these new skills with marketing. I'm going to go into an online marketing role. And then a recession hits. And now you're trying to do online marketing to people who really can't be marketed to because they don't have the ability to do things. So that's a fascinating sort of change. And what I found is I think I really sort of grew my online marketing skills during the same recession that you're talking about.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
What it makes you do is it makes you be more efficient. It makes you understand things a lot better. And it can be really frustrating because you're right, there's not as many people buying. But if you can get anybody to buy and you can turn any kind of profit, it really helps. I mean, people have no expectations for what you can do. So you can really hone in your skills and your craft and your ability. And so that's interesting. You know, it's another side thing. Just like how when you send out a campaign in the mail, you need to make sure you get it right. Also, if you're marketing in a recession, you don't really have any opportunity. There's nowhere you can hide. You need to be accountable, and you need to create these good things. And so if you can perfect marketing in a down economy, when the economy gets good, you can be really, really good.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. So moving on. So you were in financial services for...
I stayed there for a year, and I think that one of the reasons for leaving was purely because of the recession side of things, and it was just becoming challenging and kind of a bit demotivating because it just wasn't going where you kind of see things going. So then I actually took a bit of a break, which was a bit weird. I was 25, and I thought, I'm going to go travelling for a year, which was Great, actually. I learned a lot about myself. I learned how to sell. So I had a very random job in Australia where I was selling strawberries, which is completely different to online marketing. So I travelled around Australia with a group of people in different vans, and we would go into various towns, and we drove all around Australia working for this one guy selling strawberries. So I went from like Brisbane to Sydney, Sydney to Melbourne, Melbourne to Adelaide, Adelaide to Perth, all up through the middle. I saw so much of the country, met some really interesting people. And I was planning to do that for a year, and I came back after 4 months. I saw the country. It was really difficult going from having a paid job to going travelling and having next to nothing.
Yeah.
But I learned so much in that 4 months.
Yeah. So the sales, the sales, did you learn sales techniques? Did you learn how marketing affects the ability to sales? What are some of the things you learned during that time? It
was a really interesting job, as I say. I literally just fell into that. I was sat in a backpackers hostel one day, and there was a New Zealand guy came in. He was a very interesting character, and he basically used to just come and get backpackers and say, right, who wants to come and work with me? I'll drop you in these various towns. It sounds quite scary when you think back to it now. And he'd give you a load of strawberries, and then you just have to go and sell them. And he'd say, right, at the end of the first month, the people that have done really well, the people that I trust, the people that are basically selling well, will get to come on a road trip with me. And we were like, okay, that sounds great. You get to see the whole country. So it gave me a sense of, right, we've got a month here to really prove ourselves. What can we do? How can we try and make as much money for this guy as possible? So it was different sort of techniques, understanding that it's going very much back to basics. We kind of had various punnets of strawberries and working out if we could sell them for this amount, and working out the different people that we were speaking to. Some people you could charge more for, some people less. Some people you'd need to do a deal with. So it was a sales process, if you like, on very low value products, but it taught me about looking at the people that you're trying to sell to, the places that you're in, looking at the weather, looking at different techniques from that standpoint. It was how quickly you could sell things. It was the quality of the product that you were selling and your marketing and that side of things. So going right back to basics, it taught me stacks.
Yeah. Well, it taught you everything about marketing too. It taught you personalization. It taught you split testing,
customer service,
even the weather. I mean, weather can affect how people buy things as well.
Exactly.
And the funny thing is, as marketers, we hear about these things like personalization, and we hear about split testing, but it's like, okay, we need to do this because a pundit said we needed to do it, or there's software that does it. You're doing it because you needed to. If you wanted to do well here, even in your sales job, even if it is something like strawberries, there's so much variation you can do in the technique you approach things. And that's, I think that anybody in marketing should always have at least one sales job, because it makes you really respect what has to happen in order for somebody to buy.
Absolutely.
And then you can take that fundamental that you've earned there, and you can apply it to everything. You can use that same technique with every single product that's out there. Is it a good product? Does it look fresh? Does it look like it's the right thing? Is it appealing? Is it
the right time of day?
Yeah. Every single one of those things.
Is it just after lunch? Is it just before lunch? It's all these things were affecting when people would buy.
Yep. And yet we might create a web page, or we might create a website, spend 6 months arguing about what the homepage should say and trying to get everybody's opinion put on there, all these different things, when none of that really matters if it's the wrong time of day.
Exactly.
If it's the wrong person, if you're not doing the personalization, or if somebody who's going to buy anyway, why give it to them so inexpensively? And so,
it's like me trying to go down the street and sell strawberries at 2:00 in the morning when there's no one there. It's exactly it. That you need to make sure that you're in the right place at the right time with the right people and selling them a product that they want to buy. So
yeah. Well, so it sounds like your 4-month stint at selling strawberries in Australia was actually probably one of the best online marketing things you ever did.
Really valuable, really bad. Now that you look back, at the time it was tough. It was tough. I'm not going to lie. It was a difficult time, but looking back on it now, it was so worth it, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, well, and I'm just glad that you survived, because all the stories that I hear about a Kiwi approaching backpackers in a hostel
doesn't go down well.
That sounds like a bad movie in the making. So I'm just glad I'm glad that you made it back to the UK and you were able to sort of
to tell the tale.
Yeah. So it sounds like after that that's where you got to where you are now. So maybe tell us a little bit about how the transition came back from taking that year off into what you're doing now.
So after that, I came back just before Christmas, and then in the January, I thought, right, okay, I need to start looking for a job. And then I came across Koozai. Well, actually, they found my CV. I uploaded my CV to a job site, and Koozai, who I work for now, got in touch and invited me in for an interview. They'd seen my experience of working for the financial services company doing paid search. And they needed somebody to come in and do as an agency role, doing SEO and PPC for clients. So I got invited in for an interview, got offered the role, and I'm still at Koozai. My role has changed and evolved over the years, but I started off doing SEO and PPC for clients.
Great.
And so I kind of, I'd been exposed obviously to PPC previously, a little bit of SEO. So my PPC knowledge when I joined was a lot better than my SEO. My PPC still is a lot better than my SEO, but I kind of then started learning the fundamentals of SEO and then being able to apply both channels to marketing for the clients that we work with.
Yeah, and so you're applying, so you have clients in all kinds of different industries, and you're sort of just maintaining their marketing programs and helping them either get on board with the online space, or specifically with search, or maybe
make more from it.
Exactly, adding that as a complementary service.
Yeah.
Great. So how is your sales experience and your previous experience? How did that help you join the agency world? Because when you're you're around 25 years old, when you get to this point, you're going through this and you're joining a new company, and now you've risen through the ranks and you're the marketing director, and I see you speaking all over the world. I'm actually sometimes jealous of some of the things that you're doing here. So how did you make that progression
between then and now? It's been a long journey of I think it's a lot of hard work. As I started in the role, I think the first year I really just got my feet under the table and just learned as much as I could from the people that I was surrounded by, and then I kind of was starting to really help out the head of search at the time and deputising for him when he wasn't around, and just making myself available, and showing that kind of willingness that I wanted this. And I think that's key. If you want to do something, you have to make that known. If you sit there and think, I really want something, but I'm not going to tell anyone, or I'm not going to try and work for it, it's not going to happen for you. I think that the biggest thing that I've learned over the years is if you want something, you need to make it happen. So I was doing the SEO PPC, and then the head of search at the time was then leaving, and I then got offered the role. So it was then that I was able to really sort of take charge of things, and I thought, right, okay, I want to do this. I want to take our agency to the next level as well. We were a smaller agency back then. We weren't really known in the industry at all. We weren't doing any conference talks. We weren't really marketing ourselves much. There wasn't a huge amount of stuff that we were doing to try and push ourselves. So I kind of took ownership for that and really started saying, right, okay, we need to start attending conferences. We need to start actually going and networking with people. So I made myself do it, and it was the most uncomfortable situation when you first do it. When you go into these big rooms of conferences, and it was pretty male dominated as well. When you go back sort of 7 years, there was just loads of men in the industry, and everyone kind of knew each other. So it's like walking in a room and you just don't know anyone. So it was then that I thought, right, okay, if I want to do something here, I need to try and push myself. So going to conferences and just starting to speak to people. I think that is the biggest thing that has helped me over the years is the people that I've come into contact with. Like, for example, the two of us speaking, if we hadn't have been at HeroConf and sat on the same table and started chatting, that we wouldn't be speaking today.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing for me, especially in the digital world, is actually going to conferences and events and socializing with other people in the industry. You will learn so much, make so many connections, and it will massively help you along the way. If I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have been doing the role that I'm doing now.
Yeah, it sounds, if you hadn't put yourself out there in several ways, then you probably wouldn't be able to do the role that you're doing now.
No, definitely not.
I think that's the important thing to touch on here, is that, the first thing is, within your company, and this is, and a lot of people will see that you're speaking internationally, that you're on these things, and think that just happened, like you were lucky or something happened, but it's not at all the case.
No.
It starts actually a lot smaller than you might think, and it starts with letting the people who are immediately around you know that you aspire to do more than what you're doing right now.
Exactly. And
actually, it starts with yourself. It's like deciding to yourself, like, okay, I'm doing this right now. Search is pretty interesting to me. I think I can do more, or I think that I can influence more than just the circle around me right now. So you have to like start telling people, hey, I'm meant for more than this. And then when that happens, maybe somebody leaves your organization, which happens all the time. And then they're like, okay, well, who do we know who could be the director of search? And it's either an outside candidate who you're rolling the dice with, who might have a certain resume or CV and might look good on paper, or Sam. And we know what we're getting with Sam. And is she up for the challenge?
Yeah.
With that piece, so they chose you. And then you're like, okay, well, let's take this thing to the level that I want to. And it's not just our company that needs to know that we're talented and that we can do these things. It's the rest of the
outside world. Yeah.
It's the outside world. And then you start to go after that area and start small, like local meetups and stuff like that. And then over time, now you're getting invited to bigger things, bigger stages. You're meeting more people. And that's really the fundamental way to get to that point. It's not like an overnight thing that happens.
No, definitely not.
It starts with yourself. And I think that a lot of people who are listening are probably like, okay, well, that sounds easy to do, but I don't think that I have the right speaking skills, or I'm afraid to talk to people. Well, the thing I'd say about that is
You've just got to do it. Nobody wants to do it.
I never had speaking skills either. I was nervous. I'd start shaking every time that I would even talk to one person one-on-one. Trying to do a presentation to somebody. And then you just do it enough times and you get up there, you get enough repetitions that the nerves start to go away. And some people are, like some major speakers still get nervous every time they do it. But what it comes down to is putting yourself out there and making that decision that this is what I want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And then putting yourself out there. And it works. It doesn't work always immediately, though. That's the thing, is we all might think that we need an immediate payoff, or we need something to happen right away. That's not how I've seen it happen. It's usually something that it seems like it's going to be forever, and then magically it's in front of you. It starts happening, and then you're thrust into something that you're like, whoa, what did I get myself into? That's really more realistic as to how it happens.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think going back to when we just started sort of going out and meeting people at conferences and just attending conferences, not actually speaking at conferences. The first event I think that I went to was SES in London 4.5 years ago, and I thought, right, I didn't know anybody, and then a few people were saying, oh, we're going to go to the pub afterwards and go and have a few drinks, and I thought, oh, do you mind if I come along? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. This industry is the most friendliest industry.
Yeah.
So we all then went to the pub, and I ended up actually sitting next to Baz Vandenbeld, who was the founder of State of Search. Oh. And he then invited me to join the blogging team, and I think that's massively, massively helped me. He's been an absolute rock over the years, and sort of given me huge opportunities to write for the blog and sort of help him in terms of, I then became an editor, and now I'm really helping him with the day-to-day stuff when it comes to State of Digital as well. But I think going to conferences, meeting people, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have met Baz. I think writing for different blogs, just trying to get your name out there as much as possible, it all helps. But you're right, it doesn't happen overnight. It is a long process.
Yeah, well, and it's funny that I think that you'll find that a lot of people have those experiences or those revelations in the pub or afterwards.
Yeah.
Whenever people talk about conferences, the content is one thing. The content you learn in the sessions, it's usually pretty good, sometimes not that great. But it's the overall, are you a better marketer? Are you better off in your career as a result of going to this conference? And usually that comes from the people you meet and the hallway conversations where you talk about things. If you do go to the structured events, the after hours things, that type of stuff, that's where you get some good relationships. I can't tell you how much business I've gotten and how many relationships and friendships now.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Because I've just been there, just for putting yourself out there. So that's the inherent value in doing that. It's a lot more than just the content in the
You
session.
can't just turn up to a conference, sit in the talks, and then go back to your hotel room. It's the beauty. You need to go out afterwards. That is where you are going to get the most value, I think.
Yeah, it's just like it's in I know that you didn't have quite the same experience, but in the U.S. it's like the university experience. If you live in the dorms, you're getting everything inverse, the entire experience, versus if you commute to school, a little bit different, because you're just going there, getting the content, and leaving. So a lot of the value that I got in the university experience is a lot like the value that I get at conferences as well.
Yeah, and the people that you meet along the way. It's that I kind of look back and wish I had gone to university for that kind of life skill that you learn and that kind of experience. But it's and the people that you meet as well. It sounds, whenever I speak to people that have been to uni, it sounds like a great environment to kind of network, and the confidence levels that you get from being in uni seems to be kind of invaluable.
Yeah, it's a very valuable experience, but you can get that experience elsewhere, right? You've gotten that experience elsewhere, and that's the cool thing about it. Is everything happens to people at different times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we all think there's like this perfect path, but that's not true. I've interviewed tons of marketers to talk about their career in this podcast, and nobody's even had even close to the same trajectory. Everybody has their own unique circumstances and background, and that's the cool thing. But the ones who I'm talking to, they all have one thing in common, and that is that they made the decision that they're going to go and do something more than what they were doing. And that's really, that's the difference, is the people who make that decision.
Yeah, definitely.
So, as you went through this and you were, getting into new roles, and you said that you learned PPC mostly through like on the job training or just through doing it.
Yeah.
How did you refine your skills? Was it through other people, or did you read books? Did you go online and read? How do you continue to refine your skills?
Reading and practicing and learning and speaking to other people. I think there are so many great blogs now with different people sharing their ideas and techniques and successes that they've had, which again, you don't get that in many industries. It's people are out there saying, hey, this worked really well for me, and why don't you try that? And people are so open to being asked questions, and direct competitors of you are there to sort of help and guide people along the way as well, which is fab. And I think it's just reading, practice, conferences, speaking to people, joining Facebook groups that are relevant to the channel that you want to learn, forums. There's stacks of stuff online that help you learn. But I think the biggest thing for me is putting that into practice. You can't just sit there and read everything. You need to learn, and you need to fail along the way as well. You need to learn from mistakes and not do them again. But it's definitely reading and actually putting things into practice for me has helped improve my skill set along the way, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a great way to put it, is you have to put it into action. So there's case studies all over the place. There's things talking about what people have done, but that's really just, you can't recreate their situation. Just like how we can't recreate the situation of other marketers, you can't recreate the situation of people who were successful doing online, because they just have their own circumstances, their own things. So a case study, it's really a way for you to get ideas. So you can take one idea out of that case study. You can't really take the results and expect them to be the same as yours, but you can take the techniques, you can take the ideas, and you can apply it to your certain situation. And really
adapt it for what you need.
Exactly. That's the best marketers. They take something that somebody's doing, maybe not even in the same industry, or maybe they're doing something, they're taking what they see Facebook do to grow Facebook, and they're like, oh, I could do that same thing to grow my business. Or they look at some of the different the term growth hacking techniques that people do in order to get known inexpensively, and then they apply that to themselves. There's a technique that somebody told me about that does Amazon selling that I'm going to start trying to apply myself, because I'm like, wow, that's a brilliant idea. I should do that myself. And so there's all kinds of different platforms, and talking outside of your industry can sometimes be the best thing you can do, because you actually end up getting ideas that nobody's thinking about, because only talking within your industry creates this echo chamber effect where people are taking what one person wrote and assuming that it's the truth or the Bible or gospel or whatever you want to call it. But that's usually not the case. It is for them, but it may not be for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other thing that I did going back a couple of years that I think's really helped as well is I actually started up a group called Digital Females, which was designed, like I said, when we first started going to conferences, it was quite a male-dominated industry. And so I set up this group that was just designed to get a load of people, females that were interested in digital, together in a pub and invite people that wanted to try and get into conference speaking and stuff, to come and actually do presentations to a small group of like-minded individuals. And I think the group's got around about 800 people in it now. And now we just sort of meet up for lunch and we share ideas and that side of things. So it's that kind of stuff. It's doing the conference talks, plus coupled with that, it's just networking with people helps massively. Speaking at conferences is one thing, but then trying to encourage other people to do that as well. And there's so many more female speakers now, which is fab. Being able to actually go out and speak at conferences, I think you learn so much because you get to know other speakers. And also, even from the audience, when you're standing up on a stage and somebody asks you a question that you don't know the answer to, it makes you want to then go and research and find out the answer to that question, because we're all human, we don't know the answer to everything. So I think even when you are speaking and teaching people, there's always going to be something more that you can learn along the way from that as well.
Yeah. About the female speakers, I was so impressed with the UK and how many female speakers they're able to bring in, compared to what I see in the US even. I know there's some initiatives to get more gender diversity in conferences in the US, but I think that it's still really difficult. And so when we went to HeroConf, it was like 50-50.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. Actually, I think there might have been even more females women than men, which is amazing. And so I like to see that progress, because that's more closer to the workplace than anything, right? Like the workplace isn't usually 90% men and 10% women. There's almost no workplaces that fit that profile. So why should the conferences be that way?
It used to be at Koozai when I first joined, there was only me and 2 other girls.
Yeah.
And over the years, we are 50-50 in terms of male versus female ratio in the office. But it wasn't like that 7 years ago. There was a lot more men doing in our kind of in the office environment as well. And I think over the years, I don't know whether it's that there's more females getting involved in this side of marketing, whether it's becoming a more well-known industry and sector to get involved in. But yeah, it's great to see that it is a bit more of an even split as well.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're helping with that too by doing the Digital Females group and having these opportunities and sort of helping others find their way, because I think that it's not always, there's some people who will take their own initiative, and there's some people who just sort of want to join a group and just understand what's available to them and what's out there. So about the Digital Females group, is it UK only? Is it based in a city? Can people who are listening to this, is there any way they can join or be involved or start their own chapter or anything like that?
It's in, I started it off just in London when I was living in London, doing a meetup once a month in a bar and just having a few drinks with a speaker and doing a talk. Now, so that was kind of always London based, and now I've kind of taken a bit of a different approach to it, because there's so many great conferences that people can go to, and there's so many great free conferences, and especially in the UK. I'm not sure what it's like in the US, but in the UK there's a lot of free conferences that you can go to as well. So I've kind of taken a bit of a different approach with it now, and rather than doing individual meetups where we kind of just get together in a pub and somebody presents a talk, we sort of piggyback off the other conferences that are happening, and we do lunches at the time when the conferences are on, so that it's taking that fear when I first went to an event and I didn't know anyone and it was an awkward thing, and you do end up having lunch on that first day by yourself, and you're standing in the corner and you're pretending to be on your phone because you think, oh, I look like I'm an odd person because I'm by myself in the corner of a room. I've got to do something to stop people looking at me, because you feel like everyone is. So now what we're doing with Digital Females is actually arranging lunches during the conferences, so that if there's somebody that wants to come along and they're like, oh, I'm not going to know anybody, at least on day one we get together, and obviously with lunches you can't have hundreds of people, so we try and do it for like 20-25 people. It's a nice small group, and we pre-arrange a lunch. We get people to pay up front, and they then pre-order lunch, so we know we've got some food coming, in a restaurant. And then after that the relationships that you form on that lunch break can then be taken back into the conference, and people can then have friends for that afternoon. and then those friends can be introduced to other people that they know. And so that's the kind of approach that I'm doing now. So it's not really a virtual thing, but it's more based around the conferences that I'm attending. I try and do that as much as possible. That's great.
And it sounds like that can happen anywhere then. I mean, anybody
It can happen anywhere. I'd recommend people to set this sort of stuff up all around the world. It's not it's even, you don't even need to have a name for it. It's just being able to, even if it doesn't have to just be females, you can just do, why don't we just try and arrange a lunch so that 25 people who don't really know anybody can get together and have lunch during a conference. And it just gives people that kind of network of people that they can bounce off of in the afternoon and actually feel like they're more comfortable attending these sort of events because they can meet some people easily.
Yeah, I mean that's a great way to think about it, and it doesn't have to be a lunch, doesn't have to be females only. It can be anything.
It can be a drink. It can be anything. Yeah.
It's prearranging the connections, and I think that really works well for introverts. I'm an introvert myself, and I think that it's the equivalent of putting out there on Twitter, anybody going out tonight, or anybody you want to hang out and meeting people that way.
Yeah.
And people have been doing this for a while. Actually, it's funny because Rand Fishkin, who was on the podcast, I asked him, explain to me these yellow shoes. And he said that the reason why he would wear yellow shoes to conferences is because he would basically post on these message boards saying, hey, I'm coming to this conference. Look for the guy in the yellow shoes. That's how...
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so that was his way of getting people to break the ice, because he didn't know anybody at one point either. So his way of sort of dealing with that was creative. He's like, I'm going to be the only person wearing yellow shoes. And if you see a guy in yellow shoes, you know that it's me. Come up and talk to me. Let's talk about whatever. And that was his way of getting people to talk to him in the first place, or to at least make these connections between the online message board and the
offline world.
Exactly. So I have another question for you that I think might be interesting to listeners, and that is, so you work at an agency, you work on clients right now. You're also doing a lot of speaking, and you're doing a lot of that type of stuff. What's the balance between these things? Is it the speaking and the preparing your decks and blogging? Is that all happening after hours? Does your company give you time to do it? How much time do you put into that piece of it?
In terms of, in my role that I'm doing now, I head up the SEO, PPC, content and social teams. Everything else from a personal branding perspective, speaking, blogging, that I do that all in my own time. But I think I've got a passion for it, and luckily so is my partner as well. He also has the same sort of passion. So of an evening, it doesn't matter that we both sit there with our laptops and we're doing stuff, we're doing work related stuff. It's a passion. It's a hobby as well as a career. So it's that kind of helps. But the conference talks and stuff, yeah, it's a lot of work. The decks take a while to put together, as I'm sure you can appreciate as well. And also, where I've been speaking in the UK, I never repeat a talk. So everything that I'm doing is always new. So it's a lot of work, but it's all done outside of hours.
That's a tremendous amount of effort that you need to put into it. You're right, but obviously it does pay off in so many ways. It pays off in the ability to do your job, mm-hmm. the ability for clients to respect your opinion, and for them to to give them ideas, to talk to them about these different things, and really just to progress the industry, and to set a good example for people who are looking to extend and improve on their skills. You're sort of paying it forward to them as well.
Yeah, and I think if you want to get into this industry, you need to have that passion. I think if we interview loads of people, and if they think that this is just coming in and it's a 9-to-5 job and I don't care about it after hours, I don't think it's the right industry for you. I think that the key thing is you need to want that. It's not just a 9-to-5 job. I think you need to have that passion for marketing and digital in particular.
Yeah. If you treat it like a 9-to-5 job, then it probably will just be that, it'll be just a job. It won't be a career.
Yeah.
And that's
you're not going to thoroughly be enjoying what you're doing. I just don't. If that's what you're wanting to do, and it's 9-to-5, go home and then completely forget about everything you've done in the day, and it's like, oh, another day.
Yeah.
It can't be an enjoyable way to sort of spend most of your life.
Yeah, because like you said earlier, you spend most of your time at work, so you might want to make sure you want to
enjoy what you're doing. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're getting towards the end of our time here, so I just want to ask you 2 questions. One is, Can you remember the best piece of advice that you received along the way that somebody told you as you were getting into this career?
Oh, best piece of advice. There's been so much. I think if I could probably put it back to one single piece. I don't think it's one single piece. I think it's one person that has significantly helped me, and that's Baz. If I hadn't been working with him over the past 4 years, I think he's pushed me. He's helped me get speaking opportunities. He's kind of given me a bit of a platform to do that. But he's always sort of pushed me and said, you need to do this, you need to do that. Push yourself outside your comfort zone. He's helped me when it comes to sort of preparing decks. He's looked over presentations that I've done in the past. So I think rather than a single piece of advice, it's him that's really sort of pushed me.
That's great. And just to reiterate how you met him, it was because you put yourself out there and you tagged along to the pub afterwards. Yeah.
Invited myself.
Yeah. So you never know when that opportunity is going to strike or when you're going to meet that connection. And so the last question I have for you then is, I know it's hard to pinpoint advice people gave to you, but do you have any advice that you would give to a new marketer looking to make it in this industry?
Yeah, I do. I think we interview a lot of people that come in from universities, and you can tell the people that want it versus the people that are expecting it. And the biggest thing for me, if you want to get into this industry, is you need to prove to somebody that you want it. There are so many agencies, so many brands that are looking for these sort of people now, but you need to make that difference by showing them that it is an industry you want to get into. So if you want to do SEO, you need a website, and you need to show them, hey, look, I've created this website and I've tried to do this and I've tried to do that. These are the sort of blogs that I follow. These are the books that I've read. These are the conferences that I've gone to. It's not that you have to spend a load of money and pay sort of £700-800 to go to one of the more expensive conferences. Brighton SEO, for example, in the UK is 2,500 people, I think, can go to that. Mm-hmm. And it's free. So that there's free events that you can go to. And I think that passion needs to come through. If you want this, you need to show people that you want it. It's not just I've done a marketing degree, you need to employ me. It's I've been to university, or I haven't been to university, but hey, I've created this website and I've been to these conferences and these are the blogs that I follow. I think speaks masses in comparison to I've got a degree and you need to give me a job.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly how I look at it too, is if you're giving somebody an opportunity and they send you their resume and they expect to put all the work onto you, that you need to disseminate what their resume means. You need to understand the jargon they use, the acronyms, the abbreviations that they use for things, and then you need to just be able to disseminate whether that person's going to be good for you. When you put all the work on the other person, you're going to usually not be very happy with the result and how they interpret things. If you ask anybody who's hiring, especially in a growing company, especially in the agency world, they are more interested in the story and the person that they're working with than they are the CV, the resume that they see for the person. Now, it's a little bit different for big corporations. You might need, you need a certain amount of education and credentials. But if you're just looking to get into this area and have the most impact, it's not even the resume. It's not your previous experience that works. It's what you're going to do. And that's the $1 million question, is like, how do you represent what you're capable of doing if you've never done it? And I think that you have to get creative. You have to share that with people. You need to start a blog. You need to have a Twitter account. You need to sort of share that area, share your knowledge, and that's how people can tell. And then if you do that enough times, you don't really need a resume because people know what you're capable of doing. And so I think that the earlier you can start out doing that, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, and I think that I would absolutely, whenever we do interviews, I would love somebody to come in here and say, right, this is my CV, but hey, I'm not gonna talk you through my CV. I'm gonna show you some stuff that I've done, and like get out a laptop or whatever it is that they want to do, or they have printouts. They say like, this is something I've built, rather than just relying on a A4 sheet of paper to say, this is my name, this is my address, this is what I did at university, this is my work experience. It's making yourself stand out in a crowd.
Yes, absolutely.
Rather than just trying to follow suit and sort of tick boxes. It's make yourself stand out.
Yeah, and those who stand out are the ones who end up getting the best results. And it's for two reasons, I think. One is because they stood out, so they got noticed in the first place. But two is it indicates how they're going to go about things in the future, because it's not just the resume that you need to stand out. It's to get your email through to your client when they're busy, when they're not working on stuff. It's to get to go to the level where you can get people to listen to you. If you can do that in an interview, then there's a better chance that you're going to be able to do that moving forward.
I think that the best recruitment story I ever heard is there was a guy, I don't know what industry it was in actually, but he really wanted to work for a company, and he literally started sending items of clothing in the post, one piece every day for a 5-day period. So starting on a Monday, he sent like a t-shirt. They were like, "Oh, that's weird. Okay." Next day, he sent his trousers, then a hat, and then his socks, and then on the Friday, he then turned up in the same outfit that he had sent in, plus his shoes, and he said, like, "I'm here for my interview. Like I've been telling you I'm coming throughout the week, and this is me. You need to employ me." And they went, "Brilliant, absolutely brilliant," and they gave him a job.
That's great,
because it was a completely different way of trying to get their attention, and they employed him.
That's great. I thought you were going to say that he showed up in his underwear.
Just in his underwear, yeah. I want my clothes back.
That's not the right way to get a job, everybody.
No, I wouldn't recommend turning up in your underwear.
Yes. You can be as creative as you want, but make sure that you're fully clothed when you show up to an organization.
But that was him standing out in the crowded marketplace that he was trying to get into a role. But you can do that with all sorts of things. If somebody was come in or pop a USB stick in the post with an audit of a website that they've done, or a screencast, or do a video, like we've got access to all this technology now. Just do something a little bit different to get yourself known. Yeah,
or even just take the email communications that company puts out and show them how you might do it better. Redesign an email, give them a better landing page, and just print it out, and don't start with it. Never start with that stuff, but have it with you if you need it. And do your homework, because even the act of redesigning their emails or their landing pages, you can now talk much more intelligently about their marketing than you ever could if you didn't look at that stuff. And
definitely.
I remember I've done that several times where I've interviewed for board positions and stuff like that, and I have in my back pocket the things that I do to change it. But most of the time, I never really need to actually show the examples, because the conversation is going on that way. And also, the other thing is, you don't want to tell somebody that their dog is ugly. You need to have situational awareness when you do this. People always talk about like how job hunting is a full-time job in itself. I can't really speak to that because I have not been job hunting in a while. But I would say spend that, if you're doing it full-time, find the 5 companies that you want to work for that do something that you think is interesting, that you agree with the ethos that they have and you want to work with as a career, and do that right. Do full-time process of trying to get those jobs. So anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we've covered everything, actually. I started jotting down a few notes thinking, wow, I don't really know what he's going to ask me. So I kind of jotted down a few things, and you've covered everything that you may have asked. So. Awesome.
Well, that's great. I'm so happy that you were able to join me on the podcast today. It was really nice to get to know you. Next time I'm in the UK, I'm definitely going to look you up. And I don't know if I can join Digital Females, but maybe I'll be an honorary guest at the next one. So
you're more than welcome to come along.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam, for joining me today.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a good one. Well, the idea of me joining Digital Females, as exciting as it may have sounded, is probably not that practical for me right now. But I do love their credo offering principles on how to find your way in the noisy world of digital marketers. I hope that this brave and intelligent idea, like-minded professional women who never shy away from expressing their opinion, will expand, because it's really led to some good things. Sam, you were a delight. Visit Jeffalytics.com for more information, links in the show notes.
For all of those who are looking for knowledge, I got some news for you. It's not that bad if you can't go to college, just find a job you like to do. But don't apply with a boring email, send a piece of underwear. But you'll become a digital female by showing that you care.